And so I feel like the more I spoke, the more I got clear on what mattered to me and sort of what I stood for and what resonated with the folks that I want to connect with too, right? So the more I did that, the more clear I am now on like, what are the things I want to talk about? What are the things I stand for? What are the things perhaps I'm known for? And I've really leaned into those more and more as like time has gone on. And so I think the best thing I have done is really just built that voice and brand through talking and through putting it out there. And it's so hard.
Welcome to the Online Creator Podcast. I'm your host, Kim Tradewell, founder of May and James Co., a creative digital company. Building a brand is about human connection. I am here to help you articulate your story through strategy, development, and execution. I believe that anything is possible at any age and at any stage of business. The only limits we have are the ones that we place on ourselves. I want you to feel like you are supported, not alone, and that you are able to take action quickly. On this podcast, expect to hear interviews from a wide range of guest speakers, bite-sized solo episodes from myself, bingeable episodes that will give you insights, different perspectives, and actionable strategies to help you reach your goals personally and professionally. Now let's get into the show. Sara Vartanian is a launch strategist and copywriter at saravartanian.com and the host of the Launch Playbook Podcast. She helps business owners use research and data to map their customers' journey so they can craft a launch experience that makes the people they love serving most feel seen and heard. In this conversation, we discuss how she uses audio to set up her business for success and how she helps her clients find their brand voice and so much more. Let's welcome Sara to the show. Hi, Sara. How you doing?
Good, Kim. Thank you.
And thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to have you on. I've been thinking about this and dreaming about this episode forever, honestly, because we've been talking about podcasting, your podcast in particular, and just podcasting in general for so long. So thank you.
I'm so excited to be here and to talk with you. I mean, we have talked about podcasts a lot, and my podcast, we had a great strategy call about it. And I am always going back to our notes from that. So I'm excited to be on yours.
Oh, it's so exciting to hear. And I can't wait to hear different ways that you've implemented some of those strategies and how that's working for you. Let's dive right into the first question. How have you leveraged your voice to better your business in the last, year or two? Or has it differed from when you started your business to where it is now, I guess?
Absolutely. So when I first started my business, I wasn't really producing very much content at all. And I would say not sharing my perspectives or my expertise, because I think in the beginning I really doubted that expertise. And even though I knew I could do something for my clients, and I knew that my clients would tell me oh, I really liked this, or this is really wonderful. It took me a while to actually really own that in myself before I'd be willing to start sharing that. So that's changed a lot. And I think now part of that has come with experience and maybe age, my confidence is built. And so since then, what I've done to leverage my voice is there was some blog writing for a while where I was doing that. And it's something I still want to go back to, but I moved into podcasting. I started a podcast a couple of years ago now, and I started sharing, I started sharing what I would call my sawdust. Do you know what I mean by that? I may have had some things I'd recorded for somebody else, like a presentation I'd done from somebody else. And I actually started out with pulling that content at first because I was a little nervous that I didn't know what to say on a podcast. I was a bit worried about it.
So smart.
So I used things that I already had created, a little training I'd made for maybe some clients and things like that. And that's how I got started with it. And the more I started sharing, the more feedback I got clients from it, people reaching out. I had other opportunities, and that again built my confidence to start leaning into my voice. And so I feel like the more I spoke, the more I got clear on what mattered to me and sort of what I stood for and what resonated with the folks that I want to connect with too, right? So the more I did that, the more clear I am now on what are the things I want to talk about? What are the things I stand for? What are the things perhaps I'm known for? And I've really leaned into those more and more as time has gone on. And so I think the best thing I have done is really just built that voice and brand through talking and through putting it out there. And it's so hard. Like when I look back to like Sarah from a couple of years ago, I'm like, she's still like deeply uncomfortable at that idea. But now I'm much more, now I see the rewards of that and like the benefits of doing that, because really until you start articulating things and getting feedback, you can't figure out, at least I think so, you can't figure out exactly what resonates, and you build that experience and you build that conversation around it.
Yes. I love that you say sawdust. I've actually never heard of it like that. And I'm totally going to use that. So thank you for that. Because when I talk to clients when they're first starting a podcast, we talk about starting like with some solo episodes. And it's really, really hard for a lot of us. And everybody, that imposter syndrome creeps in because we just don't know. We don't have that confidence level to know. We know our information. We know what we're talking about, especially when we work one-on-one with a client. But to get like one-on-one with a microphone and do a solo episode, like what? So I do talk to clients about going back and seeing what they have already created. So I love that you have touched on that, because I think that's so important. We have already laid a really good foundation and already have tons of information that we can like go back in and kind of create some mini sods on, because why not? Like we don't have to recreate things that we already have. So I love that you said that. Did you start with like so many solo episodes, or do you kind of incorporate them now? Like how do you have your podcast structured or formatted?
Yeah, so I started with a bunch of solo episodes. I think I recorded 4, but then I also had a few people that I invited on guests right away. And so I mixed up, I think like the first 8 episodes are probably half me, half guests. And so I reached out to a couple pals who I knew would be willing to dive in with me as a guest, because I wanted to feel, safe and comfy with them. And then I reached out to a few people who were sort of on my wish list who said yes as well, who I thought would be really good guests. And I was really intrigued by what they were doing. And they said yes as well. And so that was nice. So the cadence was always supposed to be me, guest, me, guest. And it has changed over time. So recently I have a lot more guest episodes, and I want to get back more into solo episodes, because the truth is I realize the more solo episodes I have, that's when I get more people reaching out about like working with me and talking to me or in opportunities. They still will love the guest episodes and things, but I get a lot more connection, let's say with my audience through the solos. So I want to do more of those over time. And I'm thinking about shortening them, to be honest with you, because I think at one point I felt like I had to make them so long. But now I'm more willing to say, like, it's fine if it's like 10, 20 minutes. That's okay. Like, they can be bite-sized. I don't have to put all this big pressure on myself. So that's the plan. And
so cool. Actually, one of the podcasts that I follow does regular shorts, like episodes, and they're 10, 15 max. And I get a lot of value out of them. And I think that's fantastic. Like, because you don't have to, there's no room for fluff in audio, right? Like you have to you can repeat yourself numerous times, but then you're going to lose people, right? So I love that you said that, you're going to kind of condense that, because I think people just need to get to the point, right? Because sometimes some episodes need, or some content needs a little bit more length to create that story and emphasize what you're getting across, but they don't all have to be. So that's really good to know. What about this experience now that you've got 2 years under your belt and you got all this experience? Has it made you a better speaker? You mentioned the confidence levels come up. Have you had opportunities to speak in front of other audiences more? And how has that gone if you have had that opportunity?
Yeah, I think since starting my own podcast, I am, as I mentioned, I'm more assured in like the things that I want to talk about and the things that resonate. So when opportunities have arisen, I will go back to think about some of those topics that have landed and might suggest those. I would also say that when I have pitched myself, it's been a lot easier because people like to know that you can talk. And so the fact that I'm a host and not have just been on a podcast, I feel like I'm more likely to get like a solid, oh yeah, you have a podcast, cool, you can come on for sure. It's also led to some nice exchanges with people, like you come on mine, I'll come on yours type of thing, which has, again, opened up some doors that wouldn't have happened. I've talked in a lot more summits and online conferences since having a podcast as well. And I think that's just more of my comfort level since becoming a host, let's say.
That's awesome. So your podcast is called The Launch Playbook. Has there been any episodes that really stood out to you? Just kind of like highlights of your season or your year, like, or guests that came on that you were just like, oh my gosh, that was such a good conversation.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I have loved every single conversation I get like sucked
I
into.
know.
And I'm always thinking like, okay, I'm going to try to keep it to 30, but they're always like 40.
Yeah.
And I can keep going because it's so interesting once you get involved in this conversation. And I feel like, and maybe you do too, Kim, when I get to have these one-on-one conversations, it feels like I'm so lucky, right? I'm getting to really pick the brain and the strategies and ask all the things I want of these super smart people who I really admire and love the work that they're doing. And I get to like have their full attention for that hour. So I just like eat it up. I love it. The few that have really stood out to me in particular right now, I would say would be, there was one I did with Heather Sager. So she's a speaking coach, and it was all around being on a webinar and how to really sell on a webinar. And I loved that one because I think it's so challenging to sell on a webinar and not feel maybe kind of like sleazy or yucky when you go to make the segue into selling. And Heather has such a fun way of doing it. She's not like this perfect speaker, but she's a good speaker, right? Like she's really engaging. So cool. And she has like these neat ways to make you feel like you can go out in there and do it. I also love talking with Sara Bitoiu of B Squared Social. So she's like all around reels. So she shared her reel strategy for launches. So that was neat. She talked about exactly how she did it, the timing, the cadence, the type of reel she put together. So that was a really fun one because I think it could be great for a pre-launch. And then one of my other favorites was with Hillary Wise. We talked about doing hot seats. And hot seats, I love that for a launch event essentially. And it was kind of fun because it was something different than most people are doing. So it's a chance to like showcase your coaching as opposed to maybe just teaching. Like through a webinar, you get to showcase your teaching in like live in real time. So I love that one as well. But honestly, like I could go through every guest and tell you the things I took away.
Right? Well, I'm glad that you pulled out a few, and I'll definitely have them in the show notes for people to go to and listen in on, because I think, it really just kind of depends on where you're at too, right? In your business and life and what kind of really stands out. And some people's personalities just like, you just really click together. And so the conversation is just like fantastic. So that's super cool. Thanks, Sarah, for sharing that. What about, how does your personality fit in? And I think this has been something that's come up when I've interviewed a few people lately. Like, how does your personality fit with how you not only develop content, but present it? So you have this audio format in podcasting. How else do you fit in your personality with how you share your information, your content?
So on the podcast, like how is my weaving my personality into that, and how's that?
Yeah, well, that's one part of it. And then also, how do you like outside of this? Do you do a lot of video content? Are you more comfortable with like, or do you do static posts more so? I just feel like, because video is for me is just not a comfort level, and I know it's so like it's not going away either. But how do you kind of like do something that feels right with who you are? I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. So I would say that has also evolved over time. I'm definitely an introvert, but I would thrive like one-on-one. So that's what I like about the podcast with a guest is like I can get really more like exuberant and louder sounding and kind of get silly, especially one-on-one. So I have liked that format. It's worked really well for me. I like talking to the guests over video, but so far we haven't recorded the video. It's something I want to do. I know it's something you and I talked about a little bit. So it's on my roadmap for 2023 to considering doing video podcast, so that I can have the clips and things for social and maybe put on YouTube with the actual video. I won't lie, like it makes me uncomfortable as an introvert. I'd much rather not do that, but I can see the benefits, even just for social clips and things like that. I know that will help. Yeah. Because right now I do like WAV files. So we'll do audio clips and things from the podcast. I'm totally comfortable with that. Yeah. But I know that it would give me so much more. I think what I have to do is I'll probably have to psych myself up for it a lot more, which will mean like really making sure my hair is done, my makeup's done and all those things. So I know other people do that all the time, but I'm definitely a top knot Like, let's not wear a bra unless we have to kind of girls.
Right. But you know what, though? I think a lot of us can relate to that. And so I don't think being too far out of who you are is good either. So I think that's good to recognize. But I also think the short form, like being able to pull the quotes with the video, at least that's a good place to start, because it's not like, we're not talking like 30 minutes of...
Exactly. I think that's where I'm going to start with is we'll record and I'll pull some clips and then we'll move into, eventually putting some more of them on YouTube. And maybe I'll go back and put the ones I'd record on YouTube. But that is a start. YouTube does scare me a little bit more. It feels like you said, a bit more intimidating because it's like, let's just stare at her for 40 minutes talking.
I know, right?
I'm like, how's it interesting?
Yeah, I agree.
But I think because it's on my platform too, and I'm inviting the guests on as an introvert, it's allowed me to feel safer because I feel like I usually either know them or they've been a great referral from somebody, or they're somebody I have followed and I really can't wait to talk to you because I already think their stuff is amazing. And so it has allowed me to be more me, but also realizing that we're not all the same. So I know I talked to one person, I was on her podcast, and she talked about how like she's really extroverted and I'm really introverted, but it still works. And it all works we can all be who we are and come across and tell our stories and connect with people. I know I have lots of people telling me they connect with the things I'm sharing. And I'm sure however your personality is, you're going to get the same thing as well.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so good. Let's take a quick break to talk about one of my favorite platforms, Descript. If you're creating video or audio content for your online business, then you need to check out the platform Descript. Descript is an all-in-one audio and video editor that makes editing as easy as a Word doc. Upload media or record directly in Descript to instantly transcribe your file into text, then tweak the text to directly edit your media clips. Edit out filler words such as ahs, and likes, and silent gaps with a single click. Record your screen and webcam for presentations and video messages, and edit out mistakes before hitting publish. Use pro editing features such as a non-destructive multi-track editing, live collaboration, auto captioning, exports, and much more. To try this platform risk-free, check out the free plan at descript.com or check out the link in the show notes. You have a lot of experience in copywriting. When you work with your clients, how do you help them find their brand voice? I know we talked about it just briefly, how podcasting has really helped you develop yours. How do you help your clients find theirs?
So I find that a lot of the times, if they've been producing content, it does exist in the world. Essentially, they just haven't identified what it is. And so ideally, the best case scenario is a client is already creating content, and that could be content that they have done, reels, podcasts, they have been on something, or even their written content, I could say on Instagram, right? More and more people are doing reels and things like that. So I get to see the way they speak, but the more I can hear them talk, the more we can pull out their brand voice. Because we write differently than we talk oftentimes. I find a lot of my clients will really censor their writing and they'll try to professionalize their writing. I think that goes back to high school and college and all those things.
Totally. Yeah.
But when you hear them talk, it sounds quite different. So I'm always trying to get them to lean into more of the way that they actually speak, because that's who they are. And so what we do is I'll have them... So what are some podcast episodes? Maybe do you have some recordings from sales calls that you've had? But even also, what are the things that you are always getting asked from clients? What are your responses? So I have this whole questionnaire I give them. I call it a guide to you. And I ask them things like, how do you say hello? What are you known for? What are the things that you're always saying? What are the phrases you find yourself repeating? Do you use swears? What kind? What are your go-to emojis? If you could talk about anything, what would you be doing? If your brand had a personality, what would it be doing? And I always say mine would be sipping tea, having a scone with a Hudson Bay blanket on me, a hot water bottle, and some kind of a little bit smutty romance novel.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty much what I would be doing in my free time. But I'm it's cozy, right? Is really what I'm getting at. And so I talk about, I help them dig out those kind of things, what are your quirks? What do you love? What do you loathe? And we identify that. We pull all of that out. What are the stories that you're sharing over and over again? Because I bet you there are ones that you're constantly repeating. What are the shows that you're always talking about? Or what are the gifts that you tend to lean towards? I'm always picking at Schitt's Creek ones. Like those tend to be some of my go-to ones, or Ted Lasso. I don't know, like Kim, do you use gifts?
I don't, but I know I have. It's so funny because you have certain friends that do all the time, and it's so reflective of who they are. It's so funny. I'm like, I really should start because it's true. It's true.
But even that's something important to know. Like if we were creating your brand voice guide, to know which, like you, so you don't use that. So maybe there's something else that you're sharing instead. So we really go in to look at what are the common patterns and things that you're saying and repeating and talking about and sharing. And that's where we start pulling out your brand voice. So you're like, this is who it is. And maybe it's like warm or maybe it's a little bit like sarcastic and witty. I have one client who's like, I am like your best cheerleader, but she's like, I talk violence. I'm the person who will be like, oh, that person cut me off at the grocery store. I'm going to go shove my cart into their like.
Oh my gosh!
No, she would never actually do it. She's like, but that's where her brain goes to, right? She's like, I'm going to shove my cart at them, and then she like laughs and she gets in her car.
That is so funny.
But we kind of can pull that out a little bit of like that sarcastic kind of like dark side sometimes into her emails and things like that.
Yeah.
But it's like a light, it's like a humor side, but the fact is like it exists. Whereas like my brain doesn't go there. So I wouldn't talk about that. So those are just some of the things that we start doing.
I bet that'd be a really fun experience because when I first, think about creating and doing all that paperwork, I'm like, oh, that sounds like exhausting and a little intimidating. But just some of the questions that you ask your clients through the workbook that you were just talking about, it sounds like actually a really fun experience. Because even now I'm like, oh, because I am actually sarcastic, like 110%. That's where I go. But I love that whole, I also love simplicity and I love good quality of things. So simplified, but good quality. I'm not going to cheap out just because whatever. I like things to last a little bit longer. And I like the way things feel, even if it's like a coffee cup. Like I like the way it has to feel right in my hand. Yeah. Otherwise I'm like, I'll just put it in the back of the cupboard and I keep bringing out my good, I never use it. But I just think that it sounds like actually a really fun experience to kind of go through. And I think it would really be helpful when, knowing or even thinking maybe your writing should be a little bit more reflective of who you are instead of so professionalized.
Well, the more aware of who we are, the easier it is for us to write and not get stuck like at that blinking cursor or what to say, right? Yes. The more we can lean into it. And of course we want to have like a professional side because we're professionals, but it doesn't mean we still can't be us, right? We still can't show up as ourselves. Like for myself, I actually do like swear a little bit at home, but not a lot. But I think that for me, like I was a teacher for 10 years, right? So it's so scrubbed out of my everyday vocabulary because I just couldn't use it at work, obviously.
Right.
Totally. And so right now, like I will swear the odd time, but it's very rare. But I'll do it like if I'm out with girlfriends, then you'll hear me more drop like an F-bomb. Yeah. Like, it's not shocking. It's just like, it's just so scrubbed for me. Right. And again, that's like my background, but I think it's a really fun exercise to do your brand voice. And a lot of times when you see people talk about it, they'll just like have adjectives like, oh, you're like witty, you're funny, but you need to go deeper. So like funny, like what? Like you're sarcastic, like give examples. And so, and one of my clients, she's always like, she puts everything through like a current events framework. So she'll always put something through a show. She watches a lot of shows, right? Or like things on Netflix. So we'll always so she could be like, you teach through pop culture. So we'll actually give examples of what that might look like, right? Like, so we might talk about, I know we talked for a few for things around, what was it? Inventing Anna. She had some examples around that, or like the Housewives show. I don't watch that, but like some of those ones. So we'll always pull samples in. So it's really great if you can identify the way you talk, but then what that actually translates to, like what that looks like. Here's an example of that in my talk.
That totally makes sense. I love having like concrete examples so that it just I can like kind of relate it to something. That totally makes sense. Mm-hmm. So you have recently opened up your copy boutique of coffee templates. Can you talk to us a little bit more about what that looks like and how people can actually implement them into their business?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking. I'm so excited about it. It's been on my goal list for quite a while. So my copy boutique I called a limited edition copy boutique, and limited edition because I'm only going to sell a certain number of the templates before I essentially archive them and then do a new set. And that's just because I know, like, I probably notice it more than other people, but I've been in the business like quite a long time. So I know that there are templates out there that have been like making the rounds for like 10 years. Right. And you still kind of see them, and then I start seeing them everywhere. And so what I want them to feel more special, essentially.
I love this idea.
People have it.
Love it. Yes.
And also I want it to evolve, right? Because the truth is what worked maybe 7 years ago isn't working now. So I'm always going to involve them in general and change them as things are working. So it's limited edition. The difference also with my copy boutique is everything comes with a mini workshop. So I actually walk you through the strategy. I don't want you just to take my template and just like fill in the blank. I want you to learn from it so that you can become a better writer, essentially, right? So I walk you through what you need to have in every single email, like what are the must-haves that you need to keep, and then where can you make the changes? So yes, I give like language suggestions and writing suggestions, but I talk about how you can, again, switch those to the thing that makes sense for you, right? The way you say hi, like the funny story you might tell. But I give some samples of what that could be to help you get started in case you want to lean on them. But then I talk about the must-haves, like what you must keep, like the segue or like this CTA, this type of CTA, because I want you to know how to convert as well, of course. So there's a training in there. They all come with a couple little bonuses. There's like a sales page workbook. It comes with some bonuses for visuals. There's a VIP day one. It comes with some bonuses for, I think I have like variations of the actual pitch, and so that you can reuse the sales sequence like several times with the different pitches. And so I try to like make it really like robust and easy to use, and not just sending you a Google Doc, which a lot of them do. Like I actually want you to learn and become a better writer, as I said. So those are available. I have 4 things out in the shop right now, and I'll probably do a couple more.
Oh my gosh, I love this idea so much. I love that you're making them feel just a little bit more unique and special than standard templates that we have seen, like you said, and the learning, because I really do feel a lot of us are trying to learn as much as we can, because a lot of us are solopreneurs still, right? Absolutely. So we're doing what we can with what we have. And so building capacity within others to be able to have that skill, to be able to carry on in their business, I think is amazing, Sarah. I can't wait to check them out.
Thank you.
So cool. That's so cool. What's your favorite part? I think you touched on this a little bit about what you do as a copywriter for clients. I know you specialize more in launches. Is that kind of where your kind of like superpower is, or what you really enjoy, even like, because you've been doing this for a little while now. So what's your favorite part of it?
Oh my gosh, that's so hard. Let's see.
I'm asking about your favorite things.
Yeah, I love talking about favorite things. So yeah, I specialize in launches, which means really I do everything from like your lead magnet to your launch event planning and writing to sales page to like fulfillment, really, right? So I do all the things along the way. I love them all. The 2 things I think are my favorite. No, I'm going to say 3. Is that 3 okay, Kim? Can I pick 3? Yeah. I love writing sales pages. They are sort of like, I would say I have a love-hate. So there's always some point during a sales page where I'll turn to my husband and I'll be like, I hate this. Like, I need a candy. I need a chocolate bar or something. And that's
how do I get through this?
Yeah. And that's best when I walk away, usually for like about 24 hours or 40 hours, and I come back to it. Because just sometimes there's like a point now where I'm like, oh, this is just like, it's almost there, but I know I just know it needs a little like tweak or two, and I'm just not getting it. But I really love seeing them come together, because when they come together, a sales page, and then you see them designed, they look beautiful, they're telling the story, they're selling. Mm-hmm. And plus I know even if someone did not have me write their sales emails, they could pull from everything from that sales page, right? There's always the FAQ part. There's if it's perfect for you, here's what you're dreaming of and why my thing is great for you. And that's all in the sales page. So what I like about it is, you talked about building capacity. Mm-hmm. I wanted to say as a side note, if you're going to hire a copywriter for anything and you only do one thing, do the sales page, because it will do you so well for everything else. You can really pull from it.
Love that.
Even myself, when I'm feeling like I'm doing my own launches, I will do the sales page first, and I will just really like almost copy and paste from my sales page into an email. If I'm feeling like really tight for time and I don't have time to go into like, let's say more story based and stuff, I will pull from there because it's already written. So I love the sales pages. I love planning the strategy. It's so fun to like talk about what you could do and who your audience is, what bonuses do they need, what launch event would really resonate. That's just like fun to do. And I love doing the research. So that's my other favorite part.
Really?
The research
says that one.
I know, right? But the research is at the beginning. And what I like about it is it sets the tone for everything, right? So if you skip over this research part, and by research, I mean maybe sending a survey to your email list, looking at onboarding forms, having some client interviews, maybe looking at what people are saying to people who are industry peers when you're doing something similar to you, and really looking around, I want to call it like the customer journey. So people who don't yet know about you to people who do know about you, and what are the things that are on their hearts and minds and keeping them up at night, and what are they doing up until they learn about your offer and what your world essentially. I find that really so fascinating and important, and you learn so many about the opportunities and gaps and the things that you can talk about. So if I don't start with that, I find it really challenging to write a really good launch sequence, and I find that I wouldn't feel good doing that for somebody else. You can do that for yourself. That's totally fine. But I actually won't work with someone on a full launch, like on my big launch packages, unless we do research. Because I can't feel like I can never guarantee results. Like there's so many other things at play, right? Audience, like how many numbers, all those things. But I can't feel like I'm setting you up for that success unless we've done that research, because I want to know what they need us to talk about. Like, what do they need to hear from you? What are their worries so we can address them? You know, what are the things that they really want? And do our bonuses reflect that? Do we help them with that? So that's why I like the research, because it sets a tone for the strategy, for the sales page. And it sets you up for so much content, like beyond the launch. When you've done that research, you pretty much know what to talk about for the entire year. Like you can look at that as your game plan for the entire year and say, okay, here's all my podcast episodes I need to talk about. If I talk about these 20 things over the next year, I'm already setting people up to be ready for my offer because I've addressed all these types of topics and ideas. So that's what I love about it.
Oh my gosh, that is so cool. I think people, like you said, tend to overstep that a little bit too quick. Because I think laying down that foundation really does set you up for success for everything. And even when I take on a new client for a launch, if we don't build a strategy around what all their other offers are, oh my gosh, Sarah, maybe me and you should talk about some things, because it's just like so important. And I don't even dive even close to the research that it sounds that you do to lay that great foundation. So that's really, really key. I think that's so important. I know you talked a little bit about this too. You got the week open now for your templates. What's next on the list for Sarah for your business in the new year?
I'd like to just tighten up and lean into the things that I have going on. So I really like the copy boutique is fairly new. It's like soft launch, let's call, in September. And I haven't actually really been talking about it to my list and things right now because I had some other things I was talking about. So I'm looking forward to really putting like promotions and plans around the copy boutique. I want to grow that. I'm air quoting here, like the passive side of my business, but the part that doesn't just involve me. Yeah. I want to grow that. That's been part of my hope and dream for a while. And I want to continue to serve. I serve a handful of clients through my big launch package a year. I probably only take like 5 or 6 of that because they're quite a big project. I want to continue doing that. And then I would love to lean into doing more messaging for people. So when we were talking about doing this copy research, I am just about to hit publish on a VIP intensive. I'm not going to call it a day because it's going to take a week because you have to do interviews and things, where I make people's copy playbooks, I call them, where I literally do all the research for them, put it together in their customer journey. And I'm also opening a DIY version of that for people as well. So those are the things that I'm really excited about for January.
Oh my gosh, that sounds super interesting and exciting. I love it. I love it. I love it. Before I let you go, I'm going to jump into a couple of rapid fire questions where you don't have to put too much thought into them. But before I do that, where can people find you, Sarah?
You can find me on Instagram at my name, and I'm sure, Kim, you'll put it in the show notes. I know sometimes my last name can be hard to spell, or on my website, saravartanian.com.
Awesome. Yes, I will definitely put it in the show notes. Okay, a couple of rapid fire questions just for some fun. How do you shake off like a really stressful day? Like, what's your go-to thing? I think you maybe talked about this too. A tea and maybe a book.
Yeah, a tea, a book, something cozy, like a hot water bottle blankie. It's
Mhm.
called a blanket. And honestly, sometimes some kind of like little treat. So like a little bit of chocolate, or sometimes like I'm not the baker in the house or the cook, but my husband will like sometimes bake these things. They're called quickies. They're like,
Ah,
it's like chocolate, I don't know, chocolate oats and like coconut, and they're
oh
quick
yeah,
because you can
yeah.
make them in like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So sometimes if I'm like having a really bad day, I'll make those for me.
Oh, that is awesome. That is so great. What would you tweet your younger self, knowing what you know now?
Ooh, what would I tweet my younger self? I would say to just keep showing up. Like,
Mhm.
I wish, like, even now, like, I don't show up as much as I should. I definitely can fall into my rabbit hole of my work
We
and
all
forget
can.
about my own business.
Yes,
And so I
we
want to
all
say
can.
keep showing up, because every time I start showing up, it translates to steadiness in my business, which then, I sleep
Yeah.
better. There's less worries.
Yes.
There's all these other good things happening
Yes.
when I keep showing
Keep
up.
showing up. I love that. I love that. What would you say is the strangest thing about entrepreneurship now that you've been in it for a little while?
Oh my gosh. I think one of the strangest things would be, I find it kind of challenging to have friends now who aren't entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't know what to talk about because I think that my business is so interesting.
I
And I
know.
think
I did
I
the
think
same
business
thing.
is so interesting. Like, I could
Yes.
talk about business all the time. So I have found it more challenging to stay close to some of my friends who I don't see because I work from home as
Yeah.
much, because they're talking about their office and I just like, they definitely can't relate to what I'm probably saying. So I
Yes.
find it challenging. So I kind of love having like business besties who are like good
Yes.
friends who are also in
Mhm.
business.
Yeah.
Because we can kind of geek out about everything then.
There's so many things to geek out about for sure. Oh my gosh. Is there a podcast that you've been listening to or a book that's really kind of helped you with your business recently, or just kind of help guide you, or anything that you just like for entertainment?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. There are so many things like, well,
I know, right? There's
I
so
was
many
going to say
books.
I'm obsessed with like the Toronto Library app right now, because I'm such
Okay.
a voracious reader that I am like, I think I've read like 200 and something books this year. And
Oh
so
my
I am
gosh. You
always
cannot run out of things.
highlighting, like phrases from books that I like. So
Mhm. Mhm.
I recently read this book, The Diary. I think it's like, no, the Dictionary of Lost Words or something like that, that I really
So
loved.
cool.
And there's just like a lot of things I highlighted in there. So I want to just say I love reading, like in general. And that's what I've been doing a lot. I sometimes find it challenging to listen to podcasts unless I'm out walking or doing like chores around the house. I'm not someone who can listen to them while I'm working or doing other stuff. I think maybe it's just like the writer side of me. I have to like kind of have quiet. I don't listen to things. But when I am listening to a podcast, I tend to listen. I like the Heather Sager podcast, Social Up podcast. Sometimes I listen to like Amy Porterfield's Claire Petrel's Get Paid. Like, those are a few of my go-tos.
Yes, a couple of my favorites in there too. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today, Sarah. I think you really gave my listeners a few really, really good tips about copywriting, because I feel like copywriting is just one of those areas that we all have to use, we all have to do, but it's so intimidating. So I really feel like you have some tools and some tips that we can all use to better our businesses. So thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate you.
Thanks for having me on here today, Kim. It was so fun to talk to you. I always enjoy it, and I can't wait to continue our conversations offline as well.
Thank you. Okay, talk soon. Thanks so much for listening into the show. It truly means so much to me. You can check out the important links mentioned in today's episode in the show notes, and please join the conversation over on Instagram at @MayandJamesCo. I love hearing from you. There are so many great conversations coming up, so please make sure you are subscribed to Apple or Spotify or any of your favorite media players so that you don't miss out. And if you enjoyed the show today, please share and leave a review and a rating, because it helps us so very much. Until next time.